Sister mocked me for being the poor one at family gathering. I smiled calmly and said, "Good luck asking me for help again," then watched her face fall when it happened at a family gathering on a humid Sunday afternoon, the kind where the air feels heavy with things no one says out loud. We were gathered in my parents' backyard, picnic tables under a cheap rented tent, the smell of overcooked burgers hanging in the air. The first signs of trouble were small, easy to miss if you didn't know my sister, Anna. A snide comment here. A glance there. She was laughing a little too loud with our cousins, throwing looks in my direction that were sharp enough to cut. I felt it before I heard it, that building tension you get when a storm's about to break. I knew Anna had always looked down on me. She was the one with the new house, the shiny SUV, the designer handbags. She made sure everyone noticed. I, on the other hand, had always kept things simple, an old but reliable truck, a modest apartment, and a life I'd built with my own hands. I thought maybe, just maybe, today would be different. That I could enjoy one afternoon with the people who were supposed to care about me. But deep down, I knew better. Still, even I didn't expect just how public, just how cruel, she was about to make it. It started with laughter. The kind that doesn't invite you in but pushes you out. I was standing near the drinks table, sipping lukewarm soda from a plastic cup, when I heard my name tossed into the conversation like a punchline. I turned slightly, trying not to be obvious. Anna was in the center of the circle, cousins, aunts, even my parents leaning in, hanging on her every word. She was telling a story. About me. About how growing up, I was always the poor one. The one who wore shoes till they had holes, she said, laughing loud enough for the whole yard to hear. Someone chuckled. Someone else snorted. And Anna, emboldened, kept going. "You know," she said, flipping her hair off her shoulder like she was starring in some soap opera. "Some things never change." She held up her drink in a mock toast, smiling that fake, sugary smile. "To my big brother, the only guy I know who can make $1 million look like 100. The circle roared with laughter. I stood frozen, soda forgotten in my hand. For a moment, the sounds around me faded, the birds in the trees, the sizzle of something burning on the grill, even the kids shrieking by the pool, it all blurred into this loud, ringing silence in my ears. They were laughing. At me. And worse than the jokes, worse than Anna's smug little performance, was the realization that no one stopped her. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not a single cousin who'd once slept on my couch when they needed a place to crash. Not even Uncle David, who I'd helped get a job after he lost everything 2 years back. It wasn't just her. It was all of them. That was the moment, standing there with that cheap plastic cup, when the first crack split through whatever illusions I had left about family. But even then, even with the heat rising to my face and my fists clenching at my sides, I didn't let them see it. I just smiled. A slow, calm, knowing smile. Because right then, I knew something Anna didn't. Something none of them seemed to realize yet. All the quiet help behind the scenes. The money I'd loaned her when her perfect husband gambled away their savings. The lawyer I'd connected her with when she was drowning in legal trouble. The business contacts I'd given her so she could get her little boutique off the ground. That was all me. And it was all about to end. I took a deep breath, set my cup down on the edge of the table, and walked toward the crowd. Anna spotted me first. Her grin widened, sensing blood in the water. She opened her mouth to say something else, another jab, another blow, but I beat her to it. I stopped right in front of her, smiled wider, and said loud enough for every person under that tent to hear, "Good luck asking me for help again." And then? I watched her face fall. The silence that followed my words was louder than the laughter had ever been. Anna's mouth opened, closed, then opened again, like a fish gasping for air. Her perfectly polished nails clutched at her wine glass like it might save her. But nothing could. All around us, the crowd froze, caught in that awkward space between curiosity and horror. My mother's hand hovered midair over a platter of cookies she'd been arranging. My father's brow furrowed deeply, the way it always did when he realized he might actually have to deal with something uncomfortable. For one heartbeat, 2 heartbeats, nobody moved. Nobody said a word. Then Anna laughed. A brittle, high-pitched sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, come on," she said loudly, forcing another laugh. "You know we're just messing around. You're not seriously mad, are you?" I smiled again, calm, patient, like I was talking to a child who thought they could lie their way out of a broken vase. "No, Anna," I said, my voice as smooth as glass. "I'm not mad." I stepped closer, enough that she had to tilt her chin up to meet my eyes. "I'm done." She blinked. The color drained slowly from her face, like watching a glass of wine tip over in slow motion. "You want to mock me for not flashing money around?" I said, voice low but carrying, making sure every pair of ears under that tent could hear. "Fine. But you remember this, Anna." I let the words sink into the stunned silence. "You remember the calls you made crying at 2 a.m., asking for help paying the mortgage? You remember when I found you a lawyer to keep your boutique from being shut down? You remember when you begged me to pull strings to keep your husband from losing his job after that mess he got into?" The color on her face was back now, but it wasn't pride. It was panic. "And you remember that every time," I continued, "I helped you quietly. No bragging. No demanding payback. I did it because you're my sister." I turned to glance at the gathered family, at the aunts who had whispered behind my back, the cousins who had laughed a little too loud. "And as for the rest of you," I said, letting my gaze sweep across them like a slow-moving wave, "you might want to remember who you laugh at before you realize how much you've leaned on them." A few cousins shifted uncomfortably. An uncle cleared his throat. No one dared meet my eyes. Anna stood frozen, her face a mixture of fury, shame, and something else, something brittle and breaking. For once, she had no clever comeback. No mocking laugh. Just silence. I leaned in one last time, my voice quiet enough that only she could hear. "I hope your pride keeps you warm when you're alone." Then I straightened, nodded once to the room, to the family that wasn't a family anymore, and walked away. The only sound behind me was the soft clink of Anna's wine glass slipping from her fingers and shattering on the grass. I didn't rush. I walked slowly across the backyard, through the sagging tent and across the patchy grass, feeling the weight of every stare burning into my back. But I didn't flinch. Not once. When I reached my truck parked at the curb, I stood for a moment, one hand resting on the door handle, and looked back. Anna still hadn't moved. She stood like a statue among the ruins of her performance, the laughter long gone, replaced by whispers that were starting to rise like a cold wind. Good, I thought. Let her sit in it. I climbed into the truck, started the engine, and drove away without looking back again. But even as I rolled out of the neighborhood, past the tidy suburban lawns and their hollow, perfect houses, my mind was already racing. It wasn't enough to make a dramatic exit. Words fade. People forget. I needed to make it real. Permanent. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the yellow overhead light buzzing softly, the house silent except for the ticking of the old clock above the stove. And one by one I severed every thread that tied me to Anna, and, by extension, to the rest of them. First, the joint account I had set up for emergencies, the one she dipped into whenever the boutique had a rough month. Closed. Drained straight into my personal savings. Second, the lawyer I had introduced her to, the one who had quietly kept her out of court after she nearly defaulted on a business loan. I emailed him that night. Told him I would no longer be involved or providing any support for her legal matters. Professional courtesy, sure, but it would hit her hard when the bills started piling up. Third, the business contacts, the vendors, the clients I'd sweet-talked into giving her boutique a chance. I sent out a simple, polite message to each of them, thanking them for their past collaboration but informing them that I was no longer associated with Anna's business ventures. No drama. Just enough to dry up the goodwill that had kept her afloat. Last, and it was the easiest part, I blocked her. Phone. Email. Social media. Gone. A clean break. No cracks to sneak back through. It wasn't anger driving me anymore. It wasn't even pride. It was peace. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing air that hadn't been filtered through layers of guilt, obligation, and manipulation. They had wanted a world without me. They were about to get it. And Anna. Anna had no idea just how much she'd lost in those 5 minutes under that white plastic tent. The first message came less than 24 hours later. It was Anna, of course. Through a number I didn't recognize, she must have borrowed someone's phone. A long, rambling text full of fake sweetness, trying to patch things up like nothing had happened. Hey. Yesterday got a little crazy, huh? You know I was just joking. You're being kinda sensitive. Let's talk? I stared at the screen, the words blurring into noise. Deleted it without replying. The next morning it was Mom. A voicemail this time, her voice syrupy, a little too high-pitched, the way it always got when she was trying to manipulate me. Honey, don't be silly. Anna didn't mean any harm. You know how she is. Please come to Sunday dinner. Let's put all this behind us. Behind them, maybe. Not me. Delete. Block. Then Dad. Short, to the point, like he was doing me a favor. Family's family. You don't turn your back on blood. I almost laughed out loud at that one. Blood? Where was all that loyalty yesterday, when they sat there and watched me get gutted like a fish for their entertainment? Gone. Just like my patience. I didn't answer any of them. Not a single call. Not a single message. And as the days turned into a week, the messages started changing. The tone shifted, from sweet, to confused, to angry, to desperate. Anna sent another message, this time a little less cheerful, a little more frantic. You have to help me. Please. I'm in the middle of a supplier dispute, and the contracts you set up, they're falling apart. I need you to fix it. Please, just tell me what to do. No apology. Not really. Just need. Always need. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the message. It was almost funny, how fast it had all unraveled. When you build a house out of favors and lies, it doesn't take much to blow it over. By the second week, the cracks weren't just showing, they were splitting wide open. Anna's text shifted from frantic to almost pitiful. Please. I know I messed up. You don't understand, I'm going to lose everything. They're threatening to sue me. I can't do this without you. Message after message, piling up like unread postcards from a sinking ship. She tried everything, guilt, flattery, even dragging my parents into it. Mom says she's worried about me. Dad thinks you're being cruel. They're begging you to call back. I pictured them, sitting around their kitchen table, plotting the right words to reel me back in. Imagining themselves as the victims, like it wasn't their laughter that had started this domino fall. Meanwhile, Anna's carefully curated world was collapsing. I heard whispers from mutual friends that the boutique's vendors had started pulling out. That her biggest supplier had dropped her after realizing the contracts weren't being honored. That she'd missed payments on the boutique lease, and eviction notices had started to appear like vultures circling. And the best part? I hadn't lifted a single finger against her. No revenge. No sabotage. Just silence. I didn't block the last number she texted me from. No, I left it open, just so I could watch. Not because I wanted revenge. But because for once in my life, I wanted to witness the consequences land exactly where they belong. The final text came late one night, around 2 a.m. A simple message. I'm sorry. Please. Just tell me what to do. I stared at it for a long time. And then I did what I had always been too scared to do before. I deleted it. No reply. No closure. No lifeline. Because real closure? It wasn't a conversation. It wasn't a dramatic shouting match in a driveway. It was choosing silence. Choosing peace. And letting her drown in the wreckage she built with her own hands. At first, the silence felt strange. Like walking into a room you used to live in, only to find the walls stripped bare. No buzzing phone. No emergencies. No constant weight pressing down on my chest, reminding me of all the people depending on me, but never thanking me. I thought maybe I'd miss them. Maybe guilt would creep in late at night and whisper that I'd gone too far. Maybe I'd second-guess myself, like I had so many times before. But the strangest thing happened. I didn't. Instead, day by day, something inside me started to uncoil. Like a rope that had been wrapped too tightly around my ribs, finally being cut loose. There were no more calls demanding last-minute bailouts. No more. "Can you just do me a favor?" Messages that weren't really questions at all. No more pretending to laugh at jokes made at my expense, just to keep the peace. The peace was mine now. I started sleeping through the night without waking up at 3 a.m., heart racing, wondering if I was doing enough. I started putting money into my own savings account, for me, not for someone else's failing boutique or unpaid bills. I started dreaming again. Stupid things, maybe. Like fixing up my old truck. Taking a weekend trip just because I wanted to. Signing up for a woodworking class I'd put off for years. Little things that felt enormous. Because for the first time, my life wasn't about patching up someone else's mistakes. It was about building something for myself. One morning, I woke up, made coffee, and sat on my porch with the sunlight on my face. It sounds like nothing, ordinary. But I realized it was the first time in years I wasn't living on someone else's schedule, reacting to someone else's disasters. I was just living. And it was beautiful. Meanwhile, through the grapevine, I heard snippets of how things were going back at Anna's end. The boutique closed within 2 months. She tried to start another project, some online store, but without my contacts or my backing, it crumbled before it ever really started. Eventually, the calls and messages even from my parents stopped altogether. They moved on, I guess. Or maybe they found someone new to lean on. But I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology, or an explanation, or any kind of reckoning. Because the truth was, they didn't need to say a word. Their absence was all the proof I needed that I'd made the right choice. It was months later when I saw her again. By then, the seasons had changed. The sharp bite of winter was already giving way to the damp promise of spring. I hadn't thought about Anna in weeks. Life had filled itself with better things, real things, and the old wounds had scabbed over into something almost peaceful. But life has a funny way of circling back. I was coming out of the hardware store, arms full of supplies for a little woodworking project, something small, something just for me, when I saw her. Anna. Standing by her car across the parking lot, fumbling with her keys. Even from a distance, I could tell she wasn't the same either. The bright polish was gone. Her posture, once so sharp, so full of that cutting, effortless confidence, sagged in on itself, like a balloon half deflated. For a second, she didn't notice me. But then her eyes lifted, and they locked onto mine. There was a beat, a long, stretched-out second, where either of us moved. I wondered what would happen. Would she smile and pretend everything was fine, the way she always had? Would she run to me, fake tears in her eyes, ready with some story, some excuse? But she didn't. Instead, Anna froze. And in that brief, flickering moment, I saw it all written across her face. Regret. Loss. The hollow ache of someone realizing they'd burned the wrong bridge. She opened her mouth slightly, maybe to call out, maybe to apologize, maybe just to say something, but I didn't wait. I turned away. I didn't rush. I didn't slam my truck door. I just put my bags in the passenger seat, climbed behind the wheel, and drove away. No confrontation. No second chances. No dramatic farewell. Just an ending. As I pulled onto the road, I realized my hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't pounding. In fact, I felt lighter than I had in years. It wasn't anger driving me anymore. It wasn't even sadness. It was clarity. Some endings don't come with fireworks or tearful apologies. Some endings are quiet, a simple choice to walk away and never look back. And for the first time, I knew deep in my bones, I had chosen right. Driving home that afternoon, With the windows cracked just enough to let the cool air rush in, I thought about everything that had happened. It wasn't just about Anna mocking me. It wasn't even about the years of silent sacrifices I'd made. It was about patterns, the ones we fall into without even realizing it. How easy it is to keep giving pieces of yourself away, believing that maybe, this time, it'll be different. That maybe this time, they'll see your worth. But the truth is, some people never do. And it's not your job to keep handing them the tools they used to hurt you. I realized something important that day. Helping people doesn't make you weak. But helping people who mock you, belittle you, and take you for granted, that does. Respect isn't owed by blood. It's earned. And it can be lost. It took losing them to find myself. And I wouldn't trade that peace for anything. Not even for the family I used to wish I had.